we can start. And before we start, I just want to mention all of our partners for Behind the Mask. We have a lot this time. So we're collaborating with Hype Sri Lanka as campaign partners. They're helping us with a lot of things about the campaign, including measuring the impact that we are getting through this campaign this year. We're also collaborating with a lot of Rotary clubs, namely the Rotary clubs of Colombo East, Colombo West, Colombo Midtown, IIT Achievers College, the Rotary clubs of Kalhari, Kurunegala, and Kandy. So they are all joining us in terms of partnering with the campaign, and they have been helping us a lot throughout the month to spread our reach and awareness of this campaign. So we also have SLIIT Global Education joining us as our education partner. So before we start, we just have a small video to share.
Technology does not go beyond the human brain.
This is the place.
You meet your own self. Knowledge is our passion. We create
And control. I use players to develop their knowledge,
attitude and skills.
stand on the fountain of knowledge.
Join SLIIT to discover your future.
Right. So before I hand the controls over to Seth, I would just like to tell everyone watching this that, as I mentioned earlier, we are measuring the impact of Behind the Mask this year. So Hype Sri Lanka has provided us with a survey that you can find on our Facebook and Instagram pages. So if you want to help us measure the impact, please do go and fill it out. It only asks for basic information. So if you want to help us out, that would really be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, I'll hand the controls over to Seth. So Seth is the Director of Capacity Building at Hype Sri Lanka, and he will be your moderator today. Seth?
Yeah, thank you, Bharani. So good afternoon and welcome to the final edition of Behind the Mask. Let's start off with the introductions actually. Our panelists today actually don't need introductions, but I'll anyway be introducing them to you all. So let's start off with Miss Dinesh Chandrasena. We have Dr. Kalhari Pitigala, as well as Miss Iresha Chamindi, and Dr. Tush Vikramanayaka, who is yet to join us. So to make it much more easier, some of the questions I'll generally direct them towards the panel so that everyone can answer the questions, because we also don't have Dr. Tush yet. So let me introduce as to how this entire session would work. The theme today is on bullying, and I've separated the entire bullying theme into 5 sub-themes actually. These 5 sub-themes are the basic introductions, as well as the causes, different types of bullying, consequences, and prevention of bullying. Now, under each theme, there are specific questions. I will direct them to the panelists, and we will try to make this discussion even more interesting as we go on with different questions. Even the panelists, like, even though I would direct the question towards one panelist, if you think or feel like that question has to be answered, or there's more input to it, the respective speaker is done with their response. And furthermore, there's something important that you need to note. Technical difficulties are things that are quite inevitable. So in case if something happens during session, let's improvise, okay? And also, after the session, we will have a Q&A session. So our main panel discussion will go on for 2 hours, after which the audience can actually ask questions from the panelists. With that, let's start off with this. Now, let me direct the first question towards the entire panel, even though I was going to ask this question from Dr. Tush, who is also focused much more on physical harassment, who is someone who specializes in the field of physical harassment. But let's direct the question towards the entire panel. What exactly is bullying? Now, we are in the first theme of Behind the Mask, the final edition, and we need to get our definitions right. So according to you, what is bullying and how is it different from physical harassment? Or are they interlinked concepts? Shall we start off with Dr. Kalhari?
Yes, bullying is a distinctive pattern of harming and harassing other people. So there are different types of bullying, cyberbullying, verbal bullying, physical harassment. So all that comes under bullying, and people are more likely to bully other people when they feel insecure, and also because of what they have gone through in their lives, in their childhood. And also because they like to feel more powerful and control other people.
Seth, you're on mute.
Sorry about
No
that.
problem.
We now have Dr. Tush with us. Dr. Tush, what do you think is bullying? And is there a specific connection between physical harassment and bullying?
Hi, everybody. Apologies for the late start. I'm actually on call right behind me. I'm in hospital, so I got called to a patient. It's usually the case. You clear up your deck and then the last patient bogs you down. So lovely to meet you all, and thank you for having me. I missed the first part, but going straight to the question that you asked just now, is bullying anything other than physical harassment? Yes, it is. Yes. Actually, there is no specific definition for bullying. There is actually in Sri Lanka, there is not even a specific word in Sinhalese or in Tamil for bullying. I mean, I've exhausted so many dictionaries trying to find this, not just for this program, for the last few years, but there is actually not even a definition that fits the word bullying in our, and when I look at the definition of bullying, it's actually a series of actions. It's a series of things that people do that constitutes bullying, as opposed to, you can say, a specific thing. So bullying is considered as harassment, both physical and mental. And it's considered as something that comes through power, as in somebody who has more power, either from an adult to a child, or even if it's from a child, an older child to a smaller child. It might be a bigger child, more physically stronger child to a weaker child. It could be from one adult to another. Often you can see that bullying can happen from men to women, or in your workforce, from your managers to the youngest. So it's a hierarchy going downwards. It's a case of power and authority, where they think that whatever the actions that they take, whether it's the physical or the mental, is meant to cause some sort of harm, some sort of hurt. And that is the most important thing, that there is an intention in these specific actions, the intention of causing harm or hurt that causes the bullying. So it is a variety of things in the end.
Yeah, that's quite a comprehensive definition we got there. Do we have anyone else who would like to add on to it?
Yes, actually. First of all, thank you everyone for being part of this amazing forum. Thank you to Michelle and the Chokolaate team, and of course Seth for being our moderator for the day. You know, bullying is a very predatory instinct that happens across social barriers, across financial barriers, across continents. In this time of a pandemic, bullying also, I think, has come to a real forefront, where we've had certain nationalities treating other nationalities in a generalized form of bullying. And we've also had cases of verbal abuse geared towards certain ethnicities. I'm just talking about the current pandemic that's going on, which has actually exacerbated the situation and has shown us the bullying in a clarified manner. I think, just as Doctor mentioned, it's something which is power-driven. It is something which I believe, again, underlining the predatory nature, it comes from the stronger to the weaker, or what is assumed, or who is assumed to be weaker. So it could be someone who is mild-mannered, it could be someone who is physically seen as weaker, but bullying it's a very dangerous, predatory, mentally harmful act, which unfortunately we see a lot of in our societies right now.
Thank you very much. So do we have any more input to that?
Just wanted to add a small thing to that. While I agree with what Dr. Tush and Dr. Kalhari and Dinesh said, when it comes to school bullying and probably what we find in universities, psychologists would term it as probably peer victimization or peer harassment, because it tend to happen through a longer period. Most of the time, yes, it will include things like cyberbullying, and there are different stratas to bullying which will be included into it. But then when you look at specifically school bullying and the university culture and how the bullying takes place, most of us will refer to it as ragging in the context, because it's given a context-specific term. So that's, I think, again, something that we get. I mean, we do here in a country like ours, and probably across the world, ragging is also a part of it. Just wanted to add that as well.
Okay, so that actually brings me to the second question, ragging and hazing. So Ms. Dinesh, I know that you're an activist, and I'm well aware that you know about the societal issues, things like ragging and hazing. What do you think about ragging and hazing, and do they constitute the act of bullying, in your opinion?
In my opinion, they absolutely do, because I find it kind of redundant and basically an unnecessary act, because again, it's a power dynamic where people considered to be senior or people considered to be more established, such as senior students, seniors in the college, take the opportunity to bully and harass under the broad umbrella of ragging or hazing. I've been in academia for some time, and a lot of institutions do not, under any circumstances, tolerate it. And it's actually against a lot of academic policies in different areas of the world. So for example, when it comes to organizations like Raffles Colombo, or a lot of the campuses that are with these rules in place, it will not be accepted. We would not be letting anyone victimize someone that is considered a junior or someone who is considered newer and weaker. So we believe in mentorship. We believe in uplifting and building up personalities and your academic skills, not tearing you down and making you feel irrelevant. So I think hazing and bullying it's absolutely atrocious, and I don't think it's something that should be looked at so mildly in a lot of cases where it's, oh, you know, it's just part of the campus mentality, etc. And recently, as we all know, the young man who was hurt quite badly and in hospital locally, again put the spotlight on this totally unnecessary feature.
Yeah, it really is absurd when you really think about it. But within the education system in the country, as we are well aware, that is something that most students consider to be a part of the subculture within universities. I'm pretty sure Dr. Kalhari as well as Ms. Iresha would like to give their input on this.
Yeah, mostly I think this happens because of what they go through in their childhood. So if they're not accepted by their parents and if they are not respected as individuals in the society, they are more likely to cause harm and humiliate another person.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so mostly, sorry, yes, thank you, Seth. So in terms of actually bullies, what the mindset that they embody are extremely, they're extremely in need of attention, and the importance that they feel by maybe doing an act of bullying or making somebody feel minor to them is in fact part of as to what they would have been feeling for over the course of period what they've been exposed to. So one thing that as psychologists we would like to actually tell, not just for bullied individuals, also for bullies, the most important thing is to find out as to what made them come to that point. So rather than most of us asking, why have you behaved that way? What need to be the question is, what's happened to you? What made you to behave in a particular manner? So that is a dialogue that we need to actually bring up when it comes to bullying altogether, because yes, we tend to pay more attention to the bullied or the victim, but at the same time, probably we need to give, I'm not sympathizing on them, but maybe they may have faced certain amount of trauma in their childhood. There could be root causes that could have been eradicated had we paid attention to particular details as a country probably, and the mindset change is quite important when it comes to looking at the perpetrator as well as looking at the victim. In both aspects, I think it's very important to understand both stories. If you are to give a very holistic output or an overview as to what had taken place and why it had taken place in that particular manner.
Yeah, and of course, Dr. Tush is someone who works on stopping child cruelty. I'm pretty sure she knows much more about this physical harassment aspect of it than most of us. Dr. Tush?
Yes, yes. So there's this very famous, I don't know whether you're familiar, anyone on the panel, this very famous, it has only come out now, a study that the National Child Protection Authority in Sri Lanka did purely on physical punishment, because as you may know, physical punishment in children all around the world, globally, including in Sri Lanka, is the most commonest form of abuse. And even bullying is, physical punishment is also considered as part of bullying, as we've now already established. And even though sexual stuff is considered sensationalized, and we talk about, oh, ane pau, it's more of a tragedy than maybe physical or mental. But in reality, it is actually the physical punishment that is in out there. But because we have kind of normalized it so much, just like what has been explained, that in hazing and in ragging, it's a normal culture. If you don't get ragged, you're not a student. So we've kind of normalized it, and we go around saying, I got hit, I got hammered, and I am the kind of person I am because I got hammered. You just glorify it, many years later. But I'm sure when that particular person went through that experience at that very tender age, nobody ever thought, oh, I love getting hammered at the time. And nobody ever actually probably even hammered somebody. We don't even, physically hurt someone, saying, for instance, a simple example. Some people say, I hit them because I love them. I did that because I love you. Parents say that, teachers say that. But at the time of doing that, I have never ever have I ever heard a parent or a teacher actually saying, I love you, and I love you, I'm doing this for your own good, whack. I'm doing this for your own good, whack. No, never. They do that because they have that instant anger, and they want to show who's in power and an instant solution. So they go on to that. But afterwards, they regret. How many times have parents put their kids back onto their laps and regretted, ane pau ridunada, all of that, and they themselves will go and give the ice and the salt and everything else. So this study, into going back, I can rattle on. If you get me going, I can rattle on. But this study in 2017 by NCPA was very revealing. It was done in 6 districts in Sri Lanka, to all schools, government, private, Gamia school, town school, everywhere, and including all the ethnic minorities included, religions included, faith schools included, etc. And it showed very, very shockingly, and it was done only in one term. And it was done by all the, as you probably know, is a leading child expert in Sri Lanka. He was the first chairperson of NCPA, etc., and a host of a panelist of experts. And they found, shockingly, that 82% of children underwent at least one episode of physical punishment in one term. And out of that, almost 70% of teachers turned around and said, yes, we did it, and we now regret it. We didn't know what else to do. So the very question, the very point that Iresha brought there shows you what aggression, what violence, and what power and hurt does to 2 fractions. You then have the victim, and then you have the abuser, but they're both crippled at the end of the day. They both require not sympathy, but empathy. And that's where we are going wrong, not being able to understand that there are root causes in this person to react that way, and how this child or the adult or whoever it is who's getting this, the bullying, the abuse, will then go on. Actually, it's a ripple effect. I keep saying this when I talk about violence, about aggression. I keep saying this. We always talk about the victim, but actually it's a whole host of other people. I call it a ripple effect. So it starts with the abuser, then it goes to the victim, then it goes to the family. Because if it's, just take a simple example of maybe a teacher or an adult or a child doing something in school. What happens if you make a complaint? First of all, nah, no, never. That didn't happen in our school. It can't happen in our school. So you go into a denial mode. Then you have a fraction immediately with the victim, the families, the staff, and everything else. So then it becomes a more social issue. And then you have the rest of the students or the parents, or you're trying to protect the school's name, and you get cornered to another side. So then it becomes an administrative issue. So it kind of ripples on. So then it becomes an education issue. The child doesn't want to go back to school. So you have another problem. Then you have a mental issue. You have a health issue. Then it goes on to the penal system. So, the bullying, if it becomes so serious, it could have, injuries. So it goes on to a penal system. So it's a whole ripple effect. And at the end of the day, what do you get? A broken child, a broken adult. If it's an adult from a child, then you lose your productivity as a young citizen, because you're all screwed up. You don't know what you're doing. There's youth violence going on. I mean, just after Easter attack, can you imagine? Easter attack was terrorist, and then you had completely sensible people, young people, 1 month later, who were very easily led to take on a baton and hammer somebody else who was innocent. So the violence was so normalized in them that they were so gullible and vulnerable that somebody could lead them on to do that. So you have youth violence, you have violence in your home, you have the domestic situation, the university situation. What do we have at the end of the day? We have completely everybody fighting against each other, as it is at the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much for
I'd
that.
like to add
Yeah.
something there. Yeah, so what I want to say is I quite agree with what Dr. Tush said, and it's love is a very important factor. Those who have not been loved by their parents do not like to love their children also. Because I have had many patients coming to me and saying, yes, I did hit my child because that is the way I was brought up. So I think that is something very noteworthy.
Yeah, you inherit it.
Yes.
Yeah. So also recently, Hype Sri Lanka carried out a survey on ragging. And amongst our findings, this is something that I find very interesting. There were people who actually revealed the fact that they willingly went on and submitted to the act of bullying. Or rather, the fact that they believe that bullying or ragging or hazing, whatever it may be, they are willing to undergo that entire process because it's a part of that subculture within the university. Now, why do we have willing and unwilling victims when it comes to bullying? And does consent make a difference?
I mean, if I may just, because, for example, again, from the side of academia, there are policies and procedures in place at a lot of campuses that forbid physical violence, that forbid, it's against campus rules, it's against a lot of rules, even within state legislature, where you're not supposed to be beating people up regardless, whether it's on campus or not. And, I don't think there's an ability to give permission to be hazed. I think, like you said, very rightly said, it just becomes a part of the subculture where you want to belong. And what I find is that with a lot of youth, it's a sense of camaraderie, it's a sense of being part of a larger group, it's a sense of being part of the accepted group. So it's like, okay, if hazing or ragging is the normal, why am I not being part of it? I'm going to stand out in not so good a way. So I don't think it's approval. I think it's just going with the tide. And if it's happening to everyone, and as our panelists have said, it can lead to from a campus level to a school level to a legal level, it can have a lot of repercussions if you take it to the next step. So it's like, I'll just go with it in order not to make waves, which would lead to the ripple effect that Dr. mentioned.
Exactly. So, I mean, I also find it interesting, the fact that it's this entire solution of ragging, this entire problem of ragging and hazing as a simple solution where the entire batch gets together, I mean, the batch of freshers get together and they say, we don't want this, we're not going to be bullied by the seniors. And that's it, the seniors can't do anything about it. But that never happens in universities. I'm surprised as to why it doesn't happen. Do we have
Maybe there, Seth. So when it comes to, I think, as to why we want to probably be subjected to bullying willingly or unwillingly, but we are sort of threatened to do so, or we fear that we will be left out from a group or cornered from a group. Therefore, I'd rather get dragged for probably 2-3 months, and then that's the end of it. So what we need to be looking at is actually the human nature. So as humans, we are social animals. So when we are in a group, the acceptance of the group, like Dinesh said, is extremely vital to our us feeling good about ourselves, because we do seek others' acceptance, we do seek others, others telling us, yes, you are part of this group, you can become a part of this group only by doing such acts. So one thing that's extremely important from where I'm standing and is the emotional literacy that we lack when it comes to campus university students or school students is how can I put my foot down and say, I don't agree to it? If one person says so, and if you find a group, an entire group, like you said, Seth, where they can go ahead and say, look here, we don't believe in it, we are not going to be part of it. So therefore, probably, it's good for you to actually, just not victimize us. So one suggestion that if you look at the gamut of literature that is there on bullying, specifically in psychology, the most important thing is the victim actually standing up for themselves. I know it's very difficult, it does take time, but that standing up and putting your foot down and saying, I don't agree with it, because that very same strong stance that you get is what probably the bully, the perpetrator also want to feel. The strength over you, the power over you, but what you're trying to do is project the strength that you have over the perpetrator, which ultimately will actually leave them hanging and will let them realize that there's no point in actually victimizing this particular individual because I have no power over them. So that is the kind of emotional literacy that we should be giving, not just when students come into university, but this is something that in fact should start from our school system. The as well as we push our students to studious and achieve academically, a part of it should be where they excel emotionally. How do they regulate their emotions? How do they actually stand up for themselves? How do they take care of their mental health? So those are the things that ultimately will actually lead to a group of individuals, like you said very correctly, where they can stand up for themselves and say, look here, you might as well find someone else. Whatever the power that you're going to actually put on me isn't going to work out. So yeah, I just wanted to add to that point.
Yeah. Also, if you have anything to add, please add on. Just don't wait until I say. Dr. Tush, yeah.
I'm doing the school thing, putting my hand out if I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So further to what Dinesh and Iresha said, I agree, but I think it's important for us to kind of identify the scenarios, because it's very easy for us to say, stand up, be counted, object to what you're saying, but it's so difficult to do that. If it's an isolated incident in a school ground thing, you smack each other and you fix it, okay? But what we are actually talking about here in a more complex manner, where it's almost an institutionalized bullying. Now we're talking about ragging, so I'm going to focus on the ragging part. It's a very institutionalized thing, okay? There are so many factors involved in this, and one of the most important thing is that it's a subcontract. Okay, it's almost a subcontract where the authorities are getting the senior guys to do this in order to tame and keep the peace within the university. So once you have repressed them that way, you know that they will not be voicing on anything else. So you've immediately got that control. But can you ever imagine if truly the vice chancellors or the deans or anyone else who now, as Dinesh says, that this is now illegal in our country, if we know that there are rules, books and everything written in black and white, if an administrator, a senior administrator truly wants to end this, don't you think they would be more proactively trying to do that as that? So there's always some pervasive thing going on, that they actually like that. They want it happening because they have better control over the situation of the fraternity of students. If you have that, if you have the ragging, if you have that authority from the top to the students, to that, they know that if they so much as say something, oh, we don't have proper clean bathrooms or toilets, why can't we have, oh, okay, you can't speak now because you're under the control of so many people. That's very easy to have this ragging. Okay, that's one. So that's authoritative. Okay, number two is the belonging that Dinesh said. The fact that you feel as if you, because it's so normal, and if you don't get it, you almost become an unwilling or willing a willing contributor to it. Okay, again, you will find that the seniors give that contract to the juniors. Now, a classic example we come across is that the principals are asking the prefects to smack the students in school, in boys' schools. So that is now been subcontracted. Similarly, parents go and hand over the kids to the schools and say, "Ane Miss Kalhari hadanda," So you're subcontracting your Gahana part to the teacher. Yeah. So this happens everywhere. So that's the authoritative. Then the belonging. Then the third one is actually they feel secure. It's almost like apart from being belonging, when you are in a group, okay, even if you are not capable of other things, if you're not a high achiever, if you can actually, you feel secure because you know that if somebody does something to you wrong now, because you have become a willing submissive person to someone else, that you're expecting that security from them. They'll come and protect you if you're in trouble. So that kind of sense of that security, and that's the very reason why in domestic violence women don't walk away so quickly, because I think and also like they think that now if I then මම ගියොත් එහෙම දැන් මාව බලා ගන්න කවුද ගහලා හරි මාව බලා ගන්නවනේ ගැහුවට මට කන්න දෙනවනේ. So they have that security, sense of security there. So there are so many aspects to this, rather than, and so it's very difficult when you're in an institution like that state for you to walk out, stand out. It takes a hell of a lot of guts. You might have 10 people behind you, but when you go to actually speak, 9 people have fallen out. You're just on your own. Okay. So the way forward is actually to keep repeating. Yes, we've got the policy, sign up. Every educator in an institution has to sign up. Okay, starting from the top going down. Every student sign up. Okay, they've got to make this their contract. They are part of this contract, not being forced to them. So it has to be an ownership there where they buy in. If you buy in, this is your problem then. Okay, so that's what we need to do. And then we also need to make sure that, when you go to any place, like in my hospital, there's this great big sign in every room and every corridor says, we will not tolerate any kind of physical or verbal abuse to our staff. That's very clearly displayed everywhere. And that's the kind of openness and the transparency that we should also encourage in our schools and our institutions. You must have that everywhere, so that actually, if something happens, all they have to do is point at the wall and say, hello, you're not supposed to do this. You don't have to have a special backbone to stand out after months and months. It's there right in front of you. So those are the kind of things that we need to revolutionize in an academic situation. Sorry, Dinesh, I'm going on. Shut me up.
No. I actually agree with you 100%. Just as a small aside to Dr. Tush, who I agree with completely on this point, I think it's really important with policy and procedure, right from the top, as she said, to make sure that it's not only spoken of, but actually implemented, that everyone feels safe, everyone feels that they have a platform to bring forward their grievances. And safety is, again, psychological and physical, needs to be propagated from the academic institutions as well. So for example, we have zero tolerance for any sort of bullying or any sort of abusive, I mean, on so many levels. But it needs to be, I think, in more institutions. It needs to be, as Dr. Tush said, almost a contract between those who have power or those who feel they have power, those who might be newer, those who have less. And this needs to give an arena of safety where you have a voice and you have a stance when you say, look, I will not put up with this. As she said, here's the sign. It's not tolerated in this institution. I do not have to tolerate this abuse. So I think it's very important. Agreeing with Dr. Tush.
Very true. This brings us to the end of the first sub-theme. Let's move on to the second sub-theme, which is on courses. I'll start off with Miss Iresha. Now, the first question is, this is something that I am also curious about. What turns an ordinary person into a bully? Do things like domestic violence, past traumatic experiences contribute to you becoming a bully ultimately?
Yes, you could say that when you see a bully, there are, like I previously also said, there could be root causes that made them that way, and those root causes, most likely, if you really look into the person closely, might stem from their childhood, but not necessarily that, you know, maybe they've had a very sound childhood, but later on, probably during their adolescence, they might have faced an experience where led them sort of project anger towards a certain individual or a certain strata of individual, a certain group of individuals, and then they ultimately became bullies. Though, so to answer your question, when we look at bullying, there are victims, there are bullies, and there are bully victims. So the category that I would like to talk about is bully victim, where you would find people who are bullied and also they've had been victims. So that is where you would probably see them actually projecting them being victims onto someone else, their anger onto someone else, and they're ultimately bullying someone else as well. As an example, maybe a child is getting bullied in school setting, and then probably when they go home, their emotional outlet would be to bully their sibling. You know? So that is the category that we call as bully victim in psychology. So this could be happening for many reasons. Like I said, it could be because they've had faced so many situations where they could not explain the love and the warmth actually coming in their way as kids, as children. So for an example, when you look at individuals who are faced with so many childhood trauma, where they're left with the thought process where, am I a different person, you know, or do I not fit into the rest of the society? How much do I stand out? So when they're left out with those questions, most of the time they might actually, if they can't fit in and if they've not given the opportunity to fit in, they might actually feel like a sort of anger towards the society. So as a remedy to their emotional trauma, what they would do is, okay, if you don't like me, you don't really show love towards me, I'm going to anyway hate you, because there's no, reciprocity of emotions that's coming from the other end. So one thing that psychologists nowadays are actually questioning is the greatest fear that we have as kids and as children and as we grow up, probably adolescents, is the thought process that where we think we are different or I'm different. So what they fail to actually realize is pretty much the same thought process is going on in everyone's mind. So like I said, there could be childhood trauma or just a thought process that may have led someone to become a bully. Of course, there are so many other nitty-gritty factors that will act as facilitating factors to actually make someone a bully or a bully victim at the end of the day.
Yeah. Any other input?
If I may just add a little bit to that, I do agree with Dr. Iresha. And I also think that as we get older, we make conscious choices. Now, I was bullied horrendously, I would say, between grades 6, 7 to like the O level. And I mean, really badly bullied, and from name calling to you name it. And it may be that I had a very loving home with my parents that made me who I am today, but all the bullying in school and name calling and all that did not turn me into a predatory person where I turned around and did it to somebody else. It actually moved me, I think, in the opposite direction, where I firmly believe that kindness and compassion and nurturing is very important, which even though my career was in fashion design and creativity, it also led me into academia because it gave me a unique opportunity to nurture people to their full potential. So I'm just speaking about myself, using myself as an example. I think as our panelists have said, it's such a wide case study. It's a plethora of different psyche, different nuances, because I chose not to be a victim and not to bully in return. As I got older or was given the opportunities, so to speak. So I think it's a lot to do with also your choices and how you maybe pull yourself up by your bootstraps. I mean, you read as much as you can. I did not grow up in the age of the internet. I'm 48 years old, and you know, when I was much younger, everything was actual books from the British Council or from the public library, and I tried to read as much as I could and tried to educate myself as to why this was happening and how to avoid it. And I think now, with the professionals we have on our panel, I think we are given a unique opportunity to tell young people that no matter what you experience, you have the choice of how you channel that in your future.
Yeah, very true. I mean, it does go both ways, right? I mean, you can choose to be good or bad ultimately. Anyone else would like to speak on that? Yes, Dr. Tush.
To the school routine again. Sorry. Yes, I agree. Agree with Dinesh and Iresha. But if I could again maybe categorize it, I like categorizing. Kind of it simplifies the matters a bit, if we can. So the causes, you were asking about the causes of bullying. So the causes in generally, if you're talking about children, okay, bullying, when we talk about bullying, we automatically think about children. We don't even consider what's happening in an office or in a political world, as Dinesh first started with COVID, the politics, the world leaders bullying each other, saying, I won't give this if you don't do this, and the Americans doing this and the Chinese doing that. That's all bullying. Well, you don't actually consider that as bullying. Okay, so you would naturally put bully and a child together. Okay, so if we talk about that, how do children learn? First of all, if you don't know what's right and wrong, if you're not of an age that you can objectively think, how do children learn? First of all, by imitating. Okay, so you see that an adult, either the father is being aggressive to the mother or the mother is being aggressive to the children, so you imitate. Okay, so you do the same thing to someone else. Okay, so it has happened to you, so you're doing it. Second, you then watch and you repeat. Okay, imitating is one thing and repeating is a different thing. Okay, so one is it happens to you, the next is it hasn't happened to you, but you think, look at that guy, he was trying to be too smart, and then somebody came and smacked him, and everything is resolved. I can do that. So he learns from that. So he's copying. All right. And third, usually as a child, when a mom or dad whacks them, they come back with an ice lolly. Okay, because the mother or father feels guilty, so they come back with a reward. So what does the child think? Holy moly, you do something bad, it's a reward winning thing that you're doing, you know. So this child thinks, yeah, okay, violence is a rewarding process. Okay, and that is exactly what happens also in unis, because that belonging is actually a reward, because you become the pet of the seniors, you become the good guy of the lecturers. You're like, it's a reward, it's a recognition. Okay, so that comes in terms of causes for bullying. And fourth, of course, is there's just sheer mental distress. You can't think straight. You don't. It gets to a point where anger or frustration or whatever the emotion takes over you, and it's a split-second thing that you either verbally spit at someone, or say something, or throw the file at your subordinates, or whatever it is. It's that emotional lability that Iresha was talking about. So that is a cause. And fifth, we actually, I think we are to be blamed. Okay, if I were to ask, how many panelists today have been on another webinar or another talk show this week? How many? How many of you have been on? There you go. How many have you been on, Dinesh?
Right now, with this, it's been, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good, because I was just making sure. With today, it's 3, but 2 of them were education driven. Okay. But yeah, just to answer you, yes.
So this is like my third in a week. Okay. And I'm thinking, oh yeah, I have agreed to this, but I have to put a lot of work to prepare. Okay. And then you've got a family, you've got kids, you've got work, the hospital, and I'm doing this. We are to be blamed in a way. We are living this high life. We are burning the candle at both ends. Actually, we are victimizing ourselves, and we don't get it. Okay, we are victimizing ourselves. We're chasing that dream. We are chasing that whatever, and at the end of the day, you lose control. You do something, it's too late. So these are the causes. So we actually, as human beings, even though we say that COVID is going to be the new norm, COVID is going to be a new generation, COVID is going to be a new world. Hey, no. I can't see that happening, because I think that after all of this is over, we will still be going back to the way we are. So I think it's for us to stop this, we need to take a step back. We need to cool down ourselves, as Iresha said, and we need to identify how we can control ourselves first. So with that, meditation is a good thing, but I'll let someone else take on.
Dr. Kalhari, did you have something on this?
Yes, like Dr. Tush said, I quite agree. Meditation is something, and something that we can, it's an intervention for this. And also mindfulness, that is something that we can do in order to rewire our subconscious mind. So doing things like that will bring happy memories, and happy memories will simultaneously secrete happy hormones like serotonin. So it will be very helpful, because when people are depressed and unloved, they are more likely to cause harm to themselves as well as the others. So in that case, they are also in a problem. So we have to help the victim as well as the bully. And also, I would like to add something, because we were talking about children. In the short run, there are effects like anxiety, low self-esteem, bad grades, absenteeism, and sometimes insecurity. Kids would not like going to school, and they might experience separation anxiety. They will not want to leave their parents and go, because they have trust, they have kept their trust on their parents, and they're scared to go to school thinking that they will get humiliated or intimidated. So and sometimes these children don't like to take part in extracurricular activities, and they would display stage fright. And even the creative and smart kids could end up as a could end up experiencing such anxieties as a result of bullying. And also on the long run, victims of such incidents such as cyberbullying face intense psychological distress, because they are not sure at what minute what will be shared against amongst their peers. Also, they might come across depression and post-traumatic stress. It can also go up to the extent of suicidal ideations and finally suicide. So, and also in the long run, they have more substance abuse problems and higher level of juvenile delinquency as well.
Okay, so that's a lot of consequences of bullying. We'll have to probably discuss it again in the third sub-theme, or the fourth sub-theme rather. But before that, I have another question to Dr. Kalhari. So how would a bully usually pick their victim? I mean, are there common characteristics of victims that usually bullies are interested in or attracted to? That's the wrong word.
Yeah, I think the bullies would like to harass people who are very timid and less powerful, so that they will have more authority and they can have more control over them.
Okay. Is there any input on this? Yeah, Dr. Tush.
True, the innocent looking ones, also the ones that you feel threatened by. For instance, beauty is a very good reason for getting bullied. Okay, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, they say. But more often than not, it's actually the pretty, because you're different. The same thing happens in most of the universities. I didn't go to a state university, but when my friends were chosen to go to medical college, what did they do? They got rid of all of their nice clothes and they wore the most useless gummy clothes, not in the sense they wanted to look as if they were the poorest of the poor, so that they can kind of blend in, because it was quite sad that they were actually hiding their identities so much that they would not get picked on, that they would wear the slippers with a cutter and safety pin, put it into place, just so that they would not be considered as the affluent and the kids who had something, so that jealousy would not come out. Okay, and that's one of the things. So when you don't have something and when you see it in someone else, that is a cause for you to become a bully. That's one of the things. So you asked me, how do they pick their victims? Okay, yeah. So most of the time the pretty girls get caught in university to the boys. In ragging, when it's boys, girls, they always come out of the pretty one. I'm sure Dinesh will agree with me. They always come after the pretty girl, right? And they also go after the good-looking hunky guy, okay? Because they think that if you can show your power and authority and bring them down, that immediately, that the timid guys are not a threat to you anyway. So the more smarter you are, the more capable you are, you're a threat to them. So that's how they pick you as well.
That's something I've never thought of, though. I haven't thought of that aspect of it. Anyway, so another general question.
Pretty in that case.
Oh, thanks. I'll take the compliment. Another general question. So, does peer pressure usually encourage the act of bullying. The fact that your friends constantly encourage and support you while you go out there and bully someone else. Does that really encourage bullying? This is a general question, anyone. Yeah.
I mean, just again, this is just my humble opinion. I think the gang mentality, the herd dynamic, just to put it in those terms, is where, you know, everything's moving in the same direction and you just become part of that. So I think peer pressure and wanting to belong to a certain group, and if it is the powerful group per se, or the those perceived as being in positions of power, i.e. that they can actually bully, or they have the ability to overpower another person emotionally, spiritually, physically, belonging to that group may seem attractive to someone who may be a little more insecure and not have a strong self-identity. So the peer pressure, which I think everyone goes through at some point, it's belonging to the group, belonging to the cool group. For those of you like Mean Girls, I mean, that was a perfect example of a movie where, you know, the pretty, powerful girls were, you know, the rulers of the high school, and everyone wanted to belong to that clique. Of course, there was a message behind that. So I think peer pressure does play a part in normalizing it and making it more acceptable to victimize somebody else.
Yeah. This actually brings us to the third sub-theme, which we'll be discussing today, which is different types of bullying. Now, we'll focus on a couple of forms of bullying, because we don't actually have time to discuss all forms of bullying. We'll basically focus on physical bullying, cyberbullying, sexual bullying, as well as bullying in the educational system. Now, let's start off with the most popular and widespread form of bullying. This is quite novel. Cyberbullying. This makes 90% of the society bullies. If you really think about it, though, I'll direct this to Miss Iresha. So, what is cyberbullying, and why is it so rampant in society these days? And how does anonymity contribute towards this?
Well, so cyberbullying mainly is a perpetrator using a social media platform to bully target an individual in terms of probably, I don't know, their profile, their behavior, their pictures. It could be anything that they post out there, and when the public can see it. In nowadays, in today's 21st century, and where internet has become something, a commodity. It's with everybody, right? It's at your fingertips, so anybody can in fact become a perpetrator. So the reason for cyberbullying to be so commonly found, and at the same time the anonymity behind it to be extremely troubling and extremely horrific when it comes to cyberbullying, is because people can be under pseudonyms, and then they can actually bully someone, and you never know who's actually bullying you. And it's out there in the public, right? It goes out to the public, whereas when physical bullying takes place, probably the victim might think in a manner, okay, it's in a closed environment. Whereas when cyberbullying happens, as far as there's anonymity into it, it's out there in the public. You actually put there in the internet, and once you put it in the internet, there's no coming back. Yeah. So it's your probably your individual self and your perception of the others that you're actually putting it out. So as an individual who I think experienced cyberbullying to a certain extent in my early 20s, one thing that personally I've gone through is it took me a couple of weeks actually to get all right to face myself in front of the mirror and to say, okay, Iresha, it's all right for you to be bullied on internet, but it took me a while to actually tell myself, let them do what they want. You know where you want to be, and this is where you should be heading. So for you to have that dialogue and for you to actually feel all right, with cyberbullying, someone who has been bullied in a cyberspace, it takes, I think, emotionally, it takes a huge toll, because you know in the back of your mind it's out there, and you know that the perpetrator can very well be anonymous, and you know that it's very difficult probably to track them. And even if you track them, the scar that has left in your mind about yourself is long lasting, and it is actually in fact an uphill battle when it comes to actually always reassuring yourself you're worth it. And then cyberbullying, even if you're being bullied in a social media platform, that don't actually build up your idea of yourself, your self-worth, just because someone is actually bullying you. So cyberbullying together, I guess, is more traumatic and more horrific in nature compared to, I'm not saying the other bullying types are less traumatic, but cyberbullying in today's world specifically, even if you take a workplace, even if you take education sector, even if you take any other sector, state or non-state, you are actually willingly going to be a part of social media and you feel comfortable being there. But the moment you're cyberbullied, the sense of insecurity that gets established in your mind, it's very difficult to let go of it. And it takes a lot of effort and a lot of hard work if you're to come out of it. So from a personal point of view, I think the level of anonymity that's embedded in cyberbullying is actually very catastrophic, and it's very for me it left a scar that every single day I have to say, you're worth it. You don't really have to be victimized just because someone actually went down to the level of actually cyberbullying. So
and I think
sorry, that's coming from a very personal account.
Yeah, true. And I also think Dr. Kalhari can give us more details into anonymity and how cyberbullying really works. Dr. Kalhari?
Yeah, I think it's the easiest bullying type to commit. So that is one reason why many people commit cyberbullying. And anonymity-wise, they can have a username and password, and they can create a separate account for themselves and hide themselves. That is another reason that they would go for cyberbullying. And there are different terminologies as well for cyberbullying. It's also known as electronic bullying, internet harassment, so on and so forth. So most of the time it doesn't get reported as well, because predominantly people feel embarrassed to report about it. It's not only cyberbullying, even when it comes to any other type of bullying, I think most of the time they don't report it. So no action is taken against the perpetrator. So that is also a big problem. And the other thing is, people are not aware as to what they should do in case of an incident like that. So it's important to carry out maybe campaigns, anti-bullying campaigns, or give publicity as much as possible when it comes to the things, that actions they should do in order to prevent such occurrences.
And also, so as we go on, we'll also discuss things like physical bullying, sexual bullying, and bullying related to related to the education system. Now, my second question, I know you're someone who is very much vocal about femininity, so that's why I thought of asking this question from you. Now, sexual bullying is something that I have found to be quite prevalent in society, in our society especially. Things like name calling, crude comments, vulgar gestures, uninvited touching, and sexual propositioning. people use these type of things time after time to oppress young girls in public transport. I've actually seen this firsthand. Is this sexual bullying, and what can you do to prevent it if you actually see something like this?
Sorry, who was this directed
Yeah,
at?
it was for you.
It was for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, the Wi-Fi just decided to have a moment.
Okay.
Apologies on behalf of the Wi-Fi. So yeah, I think any sort of unwanted or untoward sexual advances should not be tolerated by women or men. And I believe, like I said before, I think from a societal standpoint, again, certain societies, certain areas of the world, it's considered boys will be boys, sort of, and it's almost excused, which I find just atrocious. And because I think that anyone who may have a sister or a aunt or a cousin, or I mean, we all have had moms, and you know, to have respect for women is really important. And you can always admire someone's talent, their creativity, their beauty, their careers, whatever, but it doesn't give you the right to invade personal space. So I believe that it's not just for young women or young men or men. I think in general, as a being, as a human being, your own space, your own safety, your own mental health is a priority. And any sort of sexual advances, untoward sexual advances, should be legal, because it is predatory again and not to be accepted. And I think, Seth, as you said, you have seen it happen. I think it's very important for young people or anyone, if you see a misdemeanor of like a social misdemeanor happening, to maybe voice your opinion, as long as you're safe. I mean, we don't want you getting beaten up trying to, you know, voice your opinion. But at the same time, I feel that those around speaking up also would empower the victim and would also make the predator a little less apt to keep trying this over and over again.
Yeah. Anyone else who would like to add something on that? Yeah, Dr. Tush.
I agree. I agree. One of the things that we need to do is to be able to especially with kids, is they can't defend themselves often enough. I mean, we can't. I mean, how many of us have been catcalled when we are going on the street? Do we ever, you know, kind of stop and look at the guy and say, "Moko"? You know, we don't, do we? We don't challenge that, because for that moment we have, you know, flight or fright moment, and we just want to step up and walk away. And that's the new normal human reaction. But if it was to happen on a second day, you know, and if you've got the courage, you know, a little bit of courage, you know, the guy is going to be standing there, you know, the guy is going to catcall you, and you're prepared for it, you might have a better reaction. Okay, so what does then constitute simple aggression? So we need to now identify, where would aggression then be considered as abuse? At what point would something that is being told as a joke, which you can retaliate and move on, become an abuse? So they say that especially with physical punishment and other things in child psychology, they say, and I think it's the same for adults, they say that a punishment, okay, whether it's a physical or a mental, the act, when it affects the child's physical, mental, or spiritual development, okay, then it becomes abuse. For instance, let me give a very simple example. Let's say in school, kana dineka, you know, the pulling of the ear. The pulling of the ear, if you pull it, it might hurt the child. That's okay. But if you pull it, now it's not okay actually. If that's you know, that's a punishment, but it becomes abuse. That's okay. Holy macaroni! Everybody's gonna go yes, now. So then doctor said, hey, it's okay,
Yeah.
But what I meant was it's the act. And then, if you pull the ear and you draw blood or you tear it, so you've got the physical injury from that.
Yeah.
Then you have the mental injury where the child is embarrassed or whatever. And then you also have the spiritual where, the development of that child is curtailed. So that one single action suddenly became abuse. So for someone else, that single action may not be abuse. So for instance, the catcalling thing. There were instances where I have actually stepped up and I'd actually said to him, "Hey, Moko," So for me, that wasn't abuse at that point because I managed to talk up. But there have also been instances where I have been quite embarrassed about the catcalling, where I have, led away, I have run away, and I have been embarrassed to call myself Tush. Were you Tush? You turn around half an hour later thinking, go back, go and confront the man, but you're too scared.
Yeah.
So it does happen that way as well. So what I'm trying to say is that when it happens, it's a normal reaction. We need to say to people, it's actually okay to be embarrassed, okay, but don't let it happen to you all the time. Okay, it might catch you off guard when you see something happening that you actually can't think, what on earth should I be doing at this moment? It's happening to someone else. And you may have walked away from that situation because you just couldn't figure out what to do. So it's okay. But now you know better. So if you see it happening a second time, step up. Please step up. Okay. The more we speak up, as Dinesh says, the more we step up, even just to say, don't, what are you doing? Even to look at that person a second time is enough. And we need to make sure that we understand that most of these people are cowards. Please remember that word. They are cowards. Okay, empathizing is one thing, but let's call a spade a spade. So they are cowards. Okay, so we do not need to glorify this situation where we say, we are who we are because of what we happened, and we weren't uni students unless we got bucket full of shit on our head. So let's stop that and let's not glorify that, and let's call them cowards, but then let's not be cowards ourselves by stepping up to that.
Exactly. And
I mean, just the other day, my daughter was asked to commit suicide by one of her friends, but that was meant to be a joke, she says. Now, she thought it was meant to be a joke, but only did I realize that it had got so bad that she had to get the other children to protect her. But this one boy, she goes to co-ed school. So one boy was saying, "Oh, why don't you commit suicide?" It was just a casual remark.
That's just horrendous.
Made on,
it's horrendous.
Yes. Why don't it was okay? And so I had to make her understand, honey, it's not normal. Why are you thinking it's normal? So this is the thing, the maturity. So you can't then blame this child for thinking it's okay, because we know better. So we would have all made these mistakes where we've been a bit lethargic or scared ourselves to step up. But as we grow older, we need to be wiser. The world is, even in social media, even though the abuse is happening, at the same time, there are other people who are also saying, no, it's not cool, mate. So-and-so said something like this. It's not cool. You can see that it being reposted. And there are a lot of people also being very vocal on social media. And that's very good. So and also one of the things that I don't know whether you have identified this. So when somebody puts a derogatory post on something, you then have victims and abusers within that thread. Have you noticed? And suddenly 2 or 3 people will start a little group chat within that post itself. Have you guys ever noticed that trend that goes on?
True, yes.
Either than, yes. So it's almost like, cyberbullying within cyberbullying, it's It's a that's the kind, and nobody ever steps up, isn't it? When that second or third conversation is going between 2 or 3 people, nobody ever steps up to that little group and says, hello, stop it. No, nobody dares. So these are the things that we need to identify.
And also what's most unfortunate is the fact that it has become so normalized in society that no one tries to react anymore to these problems. They consider it normal. They consider it something usual, a part of their life now. With that, Dr. Tush, I have another question for you. This is because you are working in the field of, this is your field of expertise rather. So a lot of people talk about ragging and hazing, but there's an issue that is equally predominant, but is given lesser attention, which is, this is not often recognized as bullying, but there are numerous reports of senior students in schools. I'm not referring to universities, but schools oppressing and physically harassing their juniors. Now, this mostly happens in boys' schools, I should know, in our country. Are there mechanisms to address this? And why don't we really hear a lot of these reports? Why aren't they given out to the society?
Okay, so this is what I said about subcontracting the violence. Okay, this is, now we know that in our country, teachers cannot hit children. We know that. Even the teachers know that. The principals know that. They also know that there are more and more parents, both rural, actually, both rural and in the cities, the wealthy and the not so affluent. When an injustice happens, there are people who come up and speak up. Not enough, but there are. So they know that if a principal lays a hand on a child, they know there will be consequences. Kalapa, and then this meeting, and then this, whatever that goes through. Ultimately, nothing happens, but they know it's a pain in the rear side if they do it. So what do? They then subcontract it to the senior prefects. I know it's happened because when we had this mass rally once to end corporal punishment, a senior, a doctor and an educator from Jaffna, he said to us this story where his son, who is now he's a young man and he has been very vocal about corporal punishment himself, and he's been on TV and media and everything else, this young lad. And he said in his school, he's a prefect and he's been asked to chastise the younger boys, So what the principal can't do is trying to get it done through the students. And to be the head boy, obviously you need to be the worst of the lot. Otherwise you won't get your head boyship. You won't become a prefectship, So this is another level of institutionalized bullying now, another level of it. So how can we prevent it? That was your question.
Yeah.
How can we prevent it? Okay, so we need to start with the basics of child psychology and the basics of ethics. Do you know, when we do our, from our organization, we do this island-wide thing called Satutin Pirisuraksita Adhyapanayak, happier and safer education, okay? And we go around the country giving lectures on alternative positive discipline. We also talk about the legal aspects, the psychology of children, all of that stuff. But do you know, the answer to this question is never known by the teachers. There is actually Ministry of Education published, okay, bona fide. It's almost like having the blue tick on Facebook. So it's bona fide thing to say the achara dharma paddhatiya, what do you call it? Ethics, right? The ethics of being an educator, of being a teacher. It's there in black and white, okay, but none of the teachers. So this is meant to be shown to the government teachers. These things, private schools and international schools, they don't know, obviously. But this is meant to be known by every principal, every teacher, that there is something like this. There's a code of conduct that we should be following. Nobody knows. Okay, so the first thing is that we have to have the right right levels of vetting of the Ministry of Education, the educators, the higher authorities taking a keener interest and implementing the things, the basic rules that we have. Try and prevent it before something goes wrong and putting a plaster on it, covering it, or making it even worse. You already got these things in place. Why on earth aren't we working on it? So that's number one. Number two, there are specific circulars that says, don't hit a child, don't be aggressive. Instead, do this, do this, do this. Circular number 12-2016, if anybody wants. And the other one is circular -19-2002 or something like that. It's on our website, by the way. All these things are there. So we need to reiterate these things. We need to circulate these things. We need to give, actually what we are proposing is that when a student comes to school at 6 years of age, that the Ministry of Education gives a little flyer, a little handbill to say that your child is not supposed to undergo any form of physical or any kind of aggression through the course of their education. And please don't ask the teachers to do it for you, basically, in 3 languages. Yeah. Okay, that is what we're proposing. That will show that, okay, this is a zero tolerant education system, zero tolerant of violence. So the authorities are taking the way forward. But how on earth can the authorities take forward when they're hammering each other in Parliament? Now, that's another question, right? So this is where it is. So these are the things that you can do. So be transparent, implement what we already have. Yeah. 3, get people on board. One of the things that we do wrong in our country is to try and distance the authority, whether it's a politician or a principal or anyone else. Distance yourself from the actual the citizens, if it comes between politician and a citizen, or with a school and a parent. You distance yourself, right? By distancing, you're causing a rift straight away. So that connection where you can come and talk, and where it is natural then to explain things and resolve it at a very basic level without it having to be so aggressive and so blown out of proportion, is resolved straight away, is diminished. So that connection, that complaints process, I think Dinesh will agree with me, we don't have a complaints process nowhere in this country. If you go to a bank and you want to complain, that's the answer, right? So that's not how it should be. So we have to have this complaints mechanism in place. We also have to have the disciplinary processes in place. Now we have a very, very clear-cut disciplinary process for the students. If you do this, that, and the other, you get to go stay at home, you go for detention, you get 1 week, you have to stay at home, and then you get kicked out of school. It's very clear what the student needs to do. Well, what happens when the teacher does something? Where's the disciplinary process for the teacher? Do we know what happens? Do we know what happens when they have this closed door inquiry level? What do they do? And this is not just for school, this is for everywhere, in every institution. Okay, so we have to have that as well, the disciplinary process and the ownership. That's called the ownership. Okay, so you're taking ownership of the situation. So if you're bound by it, if you've got the transparency, the contract, where it says you can't, we are an institution that promotes zero tolerance. So there's a contract, there's a binding, there's a transparency, and then there's ownership. So if it happens in our place, this is what we are prepared to do. Yeah. Okay. So these things really need to be done, and we really need to ask for these things to be done. And I have done this in so many schools, saying, please put a simple complaint procedure. Please have a simple way that parents can come and talk to you without being victimized. Simple things. And it's almost the entire cultural change of attitude and the way that we handle complaints.
That is very much.
Sorry, Seth. I would like to add thing that we are actually trying at SLIIT So this is actually coming from a non-state sector education institute. What we do is we have something called an orientation program where irrespective of which program or which discipline students belong to, they're actually mixed among groups, and they're put into different groups where they actually, we sort of try to recreate a jigsaw classroom, if I may say so, where students are educated of what their rights are and how the methods as to how they can seek out for help, how they can actually reach out to, probably if needed, the vice chancellor or the director, whoever that they need to seek out. And then we do establish lines of communication that they can actually reach out again. And then I think that's what Dr. Tush means by actually creating channels and creating transparency, where students don't feel the fear of actually reaching out to an authority, but rather they're given the freedom to voice out. If they're faced with a hurdle, they're given the freedom to voice out and say, this is something that I've experienced, and what are you going to do about it? I need some action taken towards it. That healthy conversation between, I think, between the institute and the student is extremely paramount to actually minimizing the chances of bullying taking place, because then, even though you feel like you're being victimized, that there's someone who's going to listen to you, and that you are being taken care of, and then that if you voice it out, that nobody else after you will be victimized the same manner. So that level of reassurance is, I think, that something that we're actually doing right at SLIIT, which is something that I'm very proud of. I think can add on to what Dr. Tush exactly said in terms of actually creating healthy, transparent communication between the authorities and probably the students, and employers, between employers, employees, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Thank you. So we're now moving on to the fourth sub-theme, which is on consequences. Here we're going to discuss short-term as well as long-term adverse mental effects of bullying. Now, this is where Dr. Kalhari comes in. I think she wanted to speak about the consequences earlier also. Dr. Kalhari, can we talk about short-term adverse mental effects of bullying?
Yeah, the short-term effects would be low self-esteem. People who experience bullying will not be very confident, and in the short run, they, especially children, would not want to go to the school. They will miss their parents, and they will have a fear leaving them and going because of separation anxiety. And also insecurity and absenteeism will be very high, because they don't go to school. The absenteeism will be very high. As a matter of fact, their grades would go down. They would not be able to focus. Their concentration would go down. So these are some of the short-term things that they would experience. But on the long run, victims of such incidents face intense psychological distress and sometimes depression, and it may even go up to post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. And most of the people end up having suicidal ideations, and some people even have attempted as a result of bullying.
Yeah, exactly. Are there any more additions to it?
If I just may add, again, this is again my perspective, as someone who was bullied at a young age through my teens, I think, again, I do agree with Dr. Was the, I think it was Dr. Kalhari, yes, who just spoke about the short term and long term. But I also believe that each of us as an individual need to take responsibility. And I think, again, having an arena where we can speak and we can ask for help, we can maybe get the help we need, we can get, whether it be therapy or it could be just sessions where we can just speak our mind. It doesn't need to be, it could be a counselor. I think having those platforms can make a big difference, where the victim doesn't become someone who is just waiting for the next victim. And there, of course, this could lead to, as Dr. Kalhari said, it could have PTSD, and there could be even suicidal thoughts. But me personally, in my own life, I have taken the negative and turned it into something that has driven me and made me want to enrich and enhance young people's lives and move towards empowerment. And again, like I said earlier, I had the right resources and tools to help me along the way. So with the long term and the short term, I think having resources and having counselors and therapists and knowing that it's okay to ask for help, I think is really important in order to not propagate the same as you get older.
Also, fifth sub theme, which is on prevention, is I think quite
sorry,
interlinked
Dr.
to the.
Tush wants to say
Oh
something.
yeah, Dr. Tush. Yeah, apologies. Did not see that.
That's all right. I thought you're tired of hearing me already.
No, not at all.
I just wanted to reassure people, particularly in our Sri Lankan culture, this is very different. This is I work both in Sri Lanka and in the UK. I'm currently in the UK because I'm stuck because of the COVID situation. But one of the things I really see as a difference is that people in the West are very comfortable about saying that they are in stress and that they're not coping. Okay. Whereas in Sri Lanka, it's a very taboo thing to say that you're not coping. Anything psychiatric, anything psychological that it has affected you in some way, it's considered as a sign of weakness. Okay, very classic example is I know that people love the idea of actually having heart attacks. Seriously, they do love, okay, because they go around comparing how many arteries are blocked. Oh, did you have triple bypass, quadruple bypass? You know, it's almost like a competition. Okay, two things that I have noticed that people don't want to talk about in Sri Lanka is diabetes and mental health. Okay, why not that's a different story. Mental health. Let's talk about mental health. Okay, it's a very taboo thing to say. Actually, I'm not doing so good. Just even to say, if you ask them, "How are you?" "Oh, fine." But seriously, they are in pieces. But they would say, "Oh, fine," right? But just to say, actually, I'm having a really crap day. What's wrong with saying that?
Yeah.
Let's start with the simple stuff. Okay. So in order for you to admit that there is a greater problem, you need to be able to have that confidence to actually say when you're having a bad day, to admit it and say, yeah, I'm having a bad day.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to reassure the victims. I want to reassure the abusers. Please, stepping up and saying that I don't feel right about this is the first courageous thing that you can do, no matter who you are, what you are, in this whole cycle of whether it's abuse, aggression, violence, whatever you want to call it. Okay, the first thing is acknowledging it. You might not even realizing it, but that's acknowledging that something's not right. That's the whole thing. You don't have to identify it. You don't have to diagnose it. You don't have to label it. You don't have to be an expert at it. Just know that something's not right here. And identifying that and acknowledging that and telling someone else. They say, okay, but nobody ever talks about that nobody says that. Okay, so you got to learn to be able to share your grievances, not just your happy parts. How many of us actually see Facebook post saying, actually, I'm having a crap day today? How many? Right? You would rather put, oh, my birthday pictures, what I ate and whatever it is, and look at my new dress and new look and whatever else. But never, I'm having a really bad day today. Look at me. I haven't even been able to get out of bed and comb my hair, right? So that, I think we need to get out of that. We need to get out of that entire mental crippling effect of admitting that we have an issue, that we are not okay with whatever it is. So that's the one message. If anything from this entire 2 hours that we have spoken, if you can take that one message, that it is okay to acknowledge that you're not feeling right about something, please do.
So what I was going to say earlier was the fact that our fourth sub-theme as well as the fifth sub-theme go together. So we can actually discuss both of them together, because consequences as well as prevention are things that actually are quite interlinked. So there's something else that I wanted to know about. This is also another finding of our survey that we had from Hype Sri Lanka. Most of the victims of bullying, only a hand out of these bullying victims, only a handful of victims had reported the fact that they were bullied or they are victims to the administration or to their parents. And most of them have not even reported it, not even spoken to their parents about it. What is the reason for them not reporting it, and how can we actually overcome things like this?
If I may just start on that one,
Yeah.
I think that the system of non-acceptance and non-belief, in a lot of cases, I know that in Sri Lanka, for example, with the whole boys will be boys, and it's just someone admiring you, or it's just someone joking, and it's just humor, and you're taking it the wrong way. So a lot of people, could be children, it could be young adults, it could be adults, it could be seniors, it could be anyone. It's almost like a pre-programming to tell them, just grit your teeth and put up with it, because first, nobody's going to believe you. Number two, it could be that people would think you're making a fuss, you're making it bigger than it is. It's you reading into things. And again, just from my perspective, I think we as a society, and just carrying on to what Dr. Tush said also, we need to tell people that it's okay not to be okay. That you don't have to be on all the time. You don't have to be happy and accepting and willing and just very bubbly all the time. If someone treats you in a way you don't want to be treated, it is okay to speak up. It is okay to not feel right about it. And also, as Dr. Tush and some of our other panelists said, we need to provide them with the opportunities and the fair platforms where they will be heard, and then to see results coming out of it. I think that is, I think that's really important.
Yeah. Ms. Iresha, your mic is muted, yeah.
Sorry, just to add something to that. I think understanding and identifying the emotions that we're going through, just to add to Dinesh and what Dr. Tush shared, the fact that we are all right to sort of, I think by nature, or it could be just the way that most of us are brought up, we've been told or taught, or we have sort of learned by looking at others to think that it's all right to submerge our emotions and not let it out, or not to even discuss it, maybe at least with your near dear ones. That's something that we need to overcome, because if we feel comfortable in terms of speaking about the fact that we are not feeling comfortable and that we are not actually feeling all right, it stems from us actually identifying our emotions, which is again a struggle, especially I think most of the psychologists would agree. When we practice in Sri Lanka mainly, one thing that we have to actually tell our clients is to identify their emotions, which is something I think very important when it comes to knowing yourself, understanding yourself, and knowing whether you're feeling happy or sad is extremely, extremely vital to your mental health, not just for not just when you're feeling down, but even when you're feeling happy. Am I feeling happy, or am I feeling overjoyed? Am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling over the moon? Which one am I feeling? What is the emotion that I'm going through? So that identification of emotion is also extremely important when it comes to voicing out where the problem is, and voicing out that you're feeling not right. So that is something I think we need to educate our children with. We need to educate our adolescents, youngsters with the importance of knowing their emotions and importance of actually seeking out help, specifically when they feel like they need to seek out help. Do not hesitate. Take that step. There will be someone on the other end at other end actually to listen to and probably help you out.
Yeah, of course.
And I think it's also very important to make positive affirmations so that we don't get caught to anyone, so we are not very vulnerable. So it's important to make positive affirmations like, I'm a victory, but not a victim. So if you can keep on reminding things like this every day, it's very less likely that you would get vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. So this brings me to the final question for the day. Oh yeah, Dr. Tush. Yes, Dr. Tush.
Is it okay if we show that slide now, do you think?
Oh yeah, sure. Parami, can we actually bring up the slide? Just give us a moment.
Sure, no problem.
Okay.
Okay, so we have this slide. If anybody wants, please, very happy to share in all three languages, in Sinhala, English, and Tamil. And this is a very simple safety mechanism that we have now introduced for the kids. This is coming from my own experience, from my own personal experience with my own child, and also the fact that I work with a lot of children, both overseas and in Sri Lanka. So we have this thing in the National Child Protection Authority in the UK. They call it the simple traffic light system, where the kids can understand. And this is very good even for the adults, of the red, yellow, and the green system, where anything. So it's about safety. It doesn't necessarily have to be about the fact that they're injured or otherwise. Safety means how you feel. It's a feeling. If you feel unsafe, you shout, first of all, to say stop. You don't want it happening, whatever it is. And you run away from that situation, and you go tell someone that you actually trust. So this is important for us to get this message right. Please don't say go and run and tell your mom or dad, okay? Because it might be the mom or dad who's the abuser, or it could be the teacher who's the abuser. So don't identify a person for a child, and even for an adult. Please advise them to run and tell someone that they have faith in, that they trust. It could be an older sibling, it could be an aunt or a grandmother or anyone else. So encourage them to do that, so that the children will be empowered. This is the other word that we're looking for here in this bullying situation, is about empowerment. The fact that you can come out and speak about it, or even report it, or stand up against it, is all about empowerment. So you are empowering a child who actually hasn't got the knowledge to identify anything else, but know that he or she doesn't feel safe. And the last bit that doesn't fit in here is the fact that you believe. Please always end your message by saying run, shout, run, tell. And the last thing is believe. Believe what the child says, because children don't lie. And so believe what an adult says also if they come to you in confidence. Believe. So I'm very happy to share this and so many other slides that we have as educational tools. If anybody wants, so you can contact me afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Tush. Yeah, that actually brings me to the final question. If we can actually summarize everything we discussed within the session, because I know this is something that we have already discussed, but for bystanders who are more or less spectators there, if they do actually witness a situation where there's a bully who is bullying a victim, what can you do to prevent it? What should you do to prevent it? and make sure that these bullies don't get a chance to bully their victims?
I think, again, like we were discussing, Seth, when you said you've seen, instances where young women have been, harassed and things like that. I think you need to also be aware of your own safety. We don't ask people to randomly stand up with like a hero syndrome and then they get beaten up or endanger themselves. But I think it is important to know what is right, and when you spot something that fundamentally is wrongdoing, wrong behavior, wrong treatment of another human being, I think pulling yourself away from the gang mentality and being secure enough to stand up and say, look, what you're doing is not right. I can see what you're doing and you need to stop. So again, I think the first step is to understand that you need to be safe yourself and then be able to speak up. And then you can always also appeal for help. I mean, there might be other adults around you that would join you in stopping whatever this untoward situation is. It could even be authoritative figures. So I think being able to show that you support the victim means a lot, because then they know they're not alone, and they might also get an added wind where they are able to stand up for themselves even more than they would have before, knowing that A, B, C, and D are there to get their back. So standing up and I think supporting someone when you know it's a wrong act is important.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts? Cool. So if that's the case, Dr. Tush, is there something else?
Yes, I agree with Dinesh. I agree with everybody actually, and we keep repeating the same things, and we keep reiterating the same thing, and that is, to be able to speak up. Like I said, take that one message. So that's exactly what Dinesh said at the summary as well. To take up that one message, to step up and say, and also if you are the bully, if you are the abuser, just stop and think. Just think for a moment how you would feel if you were on the other end. Just think how your words might affect someone else. How would you like those words being told to you, Gonaba Laburo or something else? How would you feel if you were to smack someone else? Remember the thunderous smacks that you've had in the past, that you so very well remember it and relish it. Remember the pain. Remember how you felt, so small and tiny. Remember how you felt ashamed when everyone else is laughing at you in class. Remember how you felt. Remember how you went home and never wanted to go back to school one day. Remember how you felt when your boss said something and you really felt like smacking the living daylights out of him, but you couldn't because the anger, the frustration held you back because you wanted that job more than anything else. Remember how you felt. So put yourself in the situation and think for a moment.
Yep. That actually is very helpful. And with that, we have come to the conclusion of the final edition of Behind the Mask. It was wonderful having all of you today. I'll hand over the session back to Parami for the Q&A session. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Seth.
Thank you, Seth.
Parami?
Hi. So I loved listening to all of you. That was really nice. And we actually have quite a few questions that came in during this entire panel, all the way from the sub-theme 1 to the last sub-theme. So without further ado, I'll just get right into it. So the first question is, in cases of incidents like ragging, how do you feel about the way media portrays it? It seems to just report the larger incidents and then forget about them. Would anyone like to take that one? Yes, Dr.
Okay, I think we actually exhausted media ethics on a very political show yesterday also. So I think this whole thing about sensationalizing violence is something that that sells even that goes up in ratings. Even the social media, the Facebook ratings, the likes, the comments, the everything else. It's about sensationalizing violence. So I think media has a very big role, a very ethical role, a very human and a very humane role to play when it comes to reporting violence, when it comes to reporting aggression, oppression, any of those things in any part of the community, whether it's against women, children, or ordinary citizens. So we need to have remember the ethics that we talked about teachers. So we actually have ethics for media. So I think the first thing they need to do is to identify themselves as the body of empowerment of good governance. Okay, so the media can report it in a more positive way. Yes, this happened, but perhaps we need to hold someone accountable to who is accountable and have that line then go through, rather than saying, oh my God, this happened and look at this and then go after the abuser. And that's what's happening. So yes, the media has a very big role to play. And first of all, they should they should themselves stop being abusers about the ethnic minority stuff as well. So let's start from there for a change.
Right. Thank you. That was very comprehensive. Would anyone else like to add on to that?
I think I agree with Dr. Tush, because the sensationalizing or actually creating a hype about the victim or the perpetrator is not the media should stand, it should be a dialogue where probably public can learn from the situation, and how can we make sure that such situations don't occur once and all. So it's the majority of responsibility actually lies in media, because we get our information through them. The next generations to come, the children nowadays, the adults, everybody in the society actually get information through them. So the information provider himself or herself is actually giving us incorrect information which are blown out of proportion. It actually creates more damage than probably the actual situation. So they have to be extremely mindful of what they report, how they report, and to which sort of population they're actually trying to address it to.
Right. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so let's move on to question number 2. So that says, if a student approaches you and confides in you about an issue with ragging or harassment, what would be the best way to handle it?
If I may
Yes,
touch
sure.
on this. So we have strict reporting order within the campus, and we also have policies and procedures in place where we have an open door policy, and we have a safe environment where students can come and speak to us on any of the issues. And this is not just obviously academia, but if they feel unsafe, if they feel that there's any untoward behavior, they can speak to us, and then we take it to the next step where we bring parties together, we talk to them, we understand what's going on, and we follow our guidelines from the campus. So it is important that, once again, young people, not just students, but people in general, feel the ability to report and to speak out, and that there are people to listen, as Dr. Tush said, that someone they can confide in, someone that they feel confident speaking to is very important, and we provide that at a lot of our campuses.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That was really informative. So does anyone want to add on to that?
If someone ever comes to you, believe them. Remember the last, believe them, and tell them how sorry you feel about it as well. Okay, that's the
Absolutely.
first thing.
Yes.
So in order to maintain the communication back again with that other person, they might come to you once, but if you don't give them that security, that it's okay. Yes, I'm really sorry that you've had to go through that experience. That's the first thing that you need to say, rather than like as if in an almost like a unbelievable tone.
Right.
Just believe it first. Okay, so believe it. I mean, without being causing a sexual harassment, give them a hug or an embrace or whatever else that makes them feel that, yes, I do care about what it is. Never mind whether we find a solution or not, but I do actually care the way that that this happened to you, and I'm sorry that this happened to you. So I think those two things will actually create the bond between you and this person who's come to you, and that would make it easy. When they trust that you are in the good books, that you are a person that they can trust, then you can take it on further if you want to take it on further.
Right. Well said. Okay. Moving on to the next question. This one says, can a bully ever change for the best, or is the characteristic inbuilt in them for life? Dr. Kalhari, maybe you'd like to take this one?
Yes, I think if there's a will, there's a way. So yeah, if they want to give it a try, if they're ready to accept that they are bullying others, and if they want to change, they can always make a change. But then in that case, it should come from them. If somebody else tries to change them, it's not going to work. They should accept what they are going through, and they should be willing to change themselves.
Right. Thank you for that answer. Yes, Dr. Tush?
Okay, so in some of the Western countries, especially in one of the South American countries where they have, I forgot the name of the country now. Okay, I am getting a bit senile myself, so excuse me. But in one of the South American countries where they have a lot of drug-related murders and violence and stuff, where their detention centers were overloaded, one of the things that they very successfully tried was actually educating these people and giving them books within the prison service. Okay, so they were allowed to read about other victims. They were allowed to read how people feel. They were allowed to actually read autobiographies and people who have become activists because of the injustices that have happened to them, etc., etc. And they educated them because they understood that it is a lack of knowledge that makes this happen. So they gave them that knowledge and the not a training, but simply bringing them the knowledge, and their level of the violent crimes, as they call it, the violent crimes have seriously reduced in this particular country. God, I'm really sorry. It's just gone out of my head what this country is, but it actually proved that giving them the tools, the right tools, does come down. So it's not so much the will, it's actually the way as well. So we need to provide them the way as well in order for them to recover. And most of the things, one of the things that is lacking in our penal system is this rehabilitation process. Unfortunately, this is a very strong thing that happens in the West, and is the lowest thing that happens in Sri Lanka. For instance, just a simple scenario where if a child is being punished in school, then they would have a rehabilitation process for the teacher as well. That the teacher has to go undergo a mental assessment and a psychiatric assessment and talk to someone. Whereas in our country, we don't have that. We have abusers coming out of jail and we don't know where the hell they're going. We don't, that kind of situation happens all the time. So we need to, not just the will, but the way as well.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Anyone else wanting to add on to this? No. Okay. So final question. I took my negative experience and learned from it. Such statements can be taken out of context, and I feel that bullies use it as a validation for their activities. Do you agree?
Sorry, say that again. Does that mean that that person is saying that the other person is thinking that it's okay? It's normalization of this? Is that what it means?
No, so what the question says is statements like, I took my negative experience and learned from it, like statements given by those who have gone through bullying and who have moved past it. Uh, this person feels like those statements are taken out of context by the bullies in order to use them as validation for their activities.
Well, to be honest, many activists, many people who come forward bravely eventually are the ones who have experienced these things in some way or shape.
Mm-hmm.
The women's rights, child rights, the black rights, the gay rights, all sorts of rights related things happen because they were at some point either them or people who are very close to them were victims. So it's only natural that you take your experience in a positive keel, that you don't remain as the victim, right? Through adversity comes advocacy. Okay, so it's not necessarily a bad thing for you to reflect upon, just like Dinesh said, she was bullied very badly when she was a child. But what she did most positively with the right support was was the person that she is now, not becoming a bully, but the opposite of it. And look at her now. I mean, what kind of advocacy is she doing now? So it's not necessarily a bad thing to reflect upon what happened to you and say that that has led me to do this, as long as what has led you to do this is a positive thing. You know, you're in a better place, not just for yourself but also for other people. Yes, you go through that trauma and you overcome it. That takes a lot. It's not just simple courage to just step up and say don't do it. Just to overcome and then become a role model for someone else, that's a whole different ballgame. Not everyone can do that. So if you were to reflect upon it and say, this happened to me and I am doing this now, thumbs up to that person, I would say.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Tush. Dinesh, did you want to add anything onto that?
If I may, thank you, Dr. Tush, for the very kind affirmation there. And you know, as I said earlier on, I've taken my experiences and turned it around to be able to empower youth and be able to empower, I think, people around me with acts of kindness and compassion, and through education and giving them platforms for creativity, etc. So just as Dr. Tush was saying, for those of us who have been through experiences, that becomes part of our library of knowledge that we can draw from to make us who we are in a positive way. And I firmly believe that. So it's just take the experiences, and with the right help, the sky's the limit.
Right. Thank you so much.
But I don't agree with saying, sorry, that there is a limit to going to your experience. Okay, so there is a limit where I do not condone the fact that when people say I was hit mercilessly and I am doing absolutely fine and I am who I am because I went through aggression. That part I don't agree. Gahapuhinda honding inoa, never. Because you never know how much more honding you could have been if you weren't hit.
Absolutely. Agreed.
Does anyone else want to add on to the last question? Right. Okay. So with that, we're done with our question and answer session, and which brings us to the conclusion of the panel of Behind the Mask. So I'd like to thank all of you here for joining us today. It was a really lovely panel, and I think everyone learned a hell of a lot from it. And Seth, thank you for doing all your moderating work and structuring it in such a way that was lovely. And thank you to all the panelists, as well as SLIIT Global Education, our education partner, Hype Sri Lanka, our campaign partner, and all of the Rotaract clubs who joined with us for this month-long campaign. So once again, thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who joined us as well, and have a good evening.